All right, let's take a really brief overview of the parties on the ballot, and we'll broadly categorise them to left or right leaning, and speculate about what sorts of policies that they would get enacted. So here we have the Sustainable Australia Party, Stop Overdevelopment and Corruption. So this party is, I imagine it would be categorised reasonably centrist. They would like to see, so they're reasonably environmentalist. They believe that Australia is getting close to its biological carrying capacity. What with our pressured natural ecosystems, we're felling a lot of land for housing developments, what have you, and the amount of water that's in Australia. So they believe that Australia should lower its immigration rate and a couple of other things.
Okay.
Now we have Pauline Hanson's One Nation, quite a famous party in Australia, one of the larger minor parties. They've already had seats in the Senate and various state senates. They're a right-leaning or far right-leaning, depending on your categorisation party. They're broadly nationalist, populist party. They're not too keen on multinationals, avoiding tax, owning housing, water, ports, things like that. They'd like to see more restrictions on abortion. They'd like to see more integration and less multiculturalism. Broadly populist policies there.
Mm-hmm.
The Animal Justice Party, well, it's going to be pretty obvious. They've got pretty obvious what they're about. There'd be a very, very vegan party there. They'd be against factory farming, probably against live exports of meat. They would support, a lot of the Greens agenda, that left-leaning socially, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we have the Australian Labor Party, our left of centre of the two majors in Australia. They have a large historical ties and current funding ties to the union movement. They're pro-worker. They have a more they're more left leaning on social issues than of course the Liberal, the other major. They'd like to see action on climate change, on wages, on cost of living. They'd like to see a bit of change on foreign policy, things like that.
Awesome.
Legalise Cannabis Australia, pretty obvious what they're about. I'm assuming they'd be reasonably left-leaning in most of their policies. And then, yes, I'd like to see the federal legalisation of cannabis recreationally and medically, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
The Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party, very interesting party. That came out of the larger boom in the in the minor parties from the 2016 elections. They've actually done quite well for themselves. They're sort of setting themselves up as a more centrist, slightly left-leaning, I guess more centrist alternative to the Nationals, because the Nationals are in coalition with the Liberal Party. With them both being country parties. So, the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers, I think, want to see a bit more action on climate change than the Nationals do. Honestly, I could stand to do a bit more reading about them. But they're a very, very interesting party. I'd suggest you have a look.
Yeah, cool. So far, that's been, really enlightening. And it already gives me an idea of, which ones I kind of want to look into a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. The Australian Federation Party, they seem to be a minor party around Australia becoming a federation, so that'd be leaving the Commonwealth of Nations, headed by, of course, Great Britain and Queen Elizabeth. The Federation movement has been going on around Australia for quite a while, although it failed reasonably spectacularly. Like us to throw off the yoke of the English and perhaps form a presidency or some other head of government instead of the Attorney General representing the Queen. Oh, so yes, now we have the local party. So the local party are interesting. They don't seem to... It seems to be that they're a party for independence. So they don't do a lot of prescribing of party policy. They're very keen on letting independents sort of set their own agenda. I think broadly that it seemed like on their website they had a lot of Tasmania focused, so they might be a Tasmania only, party for independence. So they had a bit about wind farm development, which they were cautious on, based on local issues like birds or what have you. It was the same thing for salmon farming, but they're also broadly supportive of climate change action. And climate change action, and a bit of a return to local democracy and away from party politics and things like that.
Yep.
The local party have quite an interesting policy in that they want to establish sort of citizen judiciaries or citizen review boards. So say something that a minister would usually have to a case that a minister would have to decide on, or like a business case, or some sort of pending decision that needs ministerial discretion, or even the discretion of the public servants. That sort of decision making would be moved away to sort of like a citizens' jury. So you're just like you're sort of selected for jury duty. You'd be a random selected number of citizens, and then the case would be put to those citizens, and then they would make the best decision for the country.
What sort of case, like social issues and political issues?
Yeah, like on say a draft law, or like ministerial decisions. What they exactly decide on is of course up for a bit of debate, but the idea is that like that sort of avoids corruption and special interests and things like that, and more heads are better than one. Since the ministers, themselves aren't, like the education minister is not a teacher or an ex-teacher, like they or the defence minister, may not necessarily have been in the army. Exactly. They're politicians, not domain experts. Yeah. So replacing some of their functions with, like a panel of randomly selected, a temporary panel of randomly selected citizens, can sort of have a lot of democratic positives, that they'll make community-centred decisions in ways that necessarily a politician wouldn't.
And the Greens.
The Greens, yes, our left-wing environmentalist party, formed here in Tasmania.
I didn't know that.
Yes, yes, they formed over the damming of the Franklin. As part of the hydro scheme here, we were going to flood a nice river valley, I believe, and the Greens didn't want that done at all, and they got the federal government to step in and have it declared a national park, and the development was stopped. So the Greens obviously a lot of left-leaning socially, left-leaning economically. They'd like to see a bit more redistributive economic justice. They'd like to see immigration reform. The end of offshore processing. Obviously, they'd like to see huge changes to fix climate change. The rapid introduction of everything left you could dream of. The Greens are into. The Greens are also the third largest party in Australia. They're definitely the largest minor party. Let's continue.
Tell me about the Liberal Democrats.
So the Liberal Democrats. The Liberal Democrats are libertarians. Actually, the Liberal Democrats believe in small government. Sort of like the libertarians over in America do. So they'd like to see the reduction of red tape and the easing of commerce laws and things like that. Usually.
What is a libertarian?
A libertarian believes in small government. So the liberty, libertarian refers to liberty, and so they're all about individual liberty, or the liberty of free organisations that people come into, like business organisations or what have you. So they view the government in a very negative, inherently negative way, and that government, as soon as the government begins to interfere in say a sphere of human endeavour, like say markets or social laws, things like that, that it inherently ruins them.
United Australia Party.
Yes, United Australia Party. So run and bankrolled by the mining magnate Clive Palmer up in Queensland. You can see their big yellow ads around everywhere. They're a lot like Pauline Hanson's One Nation, except a little bit more accepting of immigration. They're broad populists. They keen on development, and they're keen on a lot of the stuff that you would expect a party to be if it was bankrolled by a mining magnate. They're keen on exports and businesses and developing and mining and what have you.
Okay.
So the Liberals are a right-leaning major party. They're broadly in support of business. They're pro small, medium, large business. They They advertise a lot on making the Australian economy stronger, so that there's more money around for everyone. They're very much of the opinion that a rising tide lifts all boats. The higher Australia's GDP, the better for everyone. As far as the Liberals are concerned, low taxes. Not hugely keen on the welfare state, but they're not going to dismantle it now. Yeah, pro business. They're just beginning to work on climate change. They have a policy. They have a policy now. Of course, it's been argued that it's not incredible, but that's up for debate. Yeah, generally the pro-business party. And of course they are. We can't forget the federally, at least, the Liberals are in coalition with the Nationals. And the Nationals are the farming party, much like the Shooters. They're the right-leaning farming party on the mainland, so federally, a vote for a Liberal will also get in, part of the national agenda, which is, obviously pro-farmer. A lot of, not all of them, but a lot of the Nationals are not keen on climate change or dealing with climate change. And they're quite conservative on social issues as well.
She's Tasmanian?
Yes, so the Jacqui Lambie party, the Jacqui Lambie network, sorry, it's very interesting, Tasmanian party. Jacqui Lambie came up in the big gaggle of independence from the 2016 election in some odd preference flow situation that won't happen again since they've changed the rules, something like that. Anyway, she started off in Palmer's party, but didn't like Palmer very much, so she struck out on her own. Seems reasonably centrist in most of her policies. She's willing to work with both Labor and Liberal. She's an ex-army veteran, so she's quite involved in veterans affairs. I think she gets better pay for them. More counselling. Work on PTSD, things like that. She's gotten housing loan forgiveness for Tasmanians. A bit of a Tasmanian interest party, but she sort of bills herself as the anti-politician, like a lot of independents, sort of down to earth, cuts through the bullshit, etc., etc.
Informed Medical Options Party.
Yep. So the Informed Medical Options Party formed in 2016, and obviously probably got a lot of attention. What with the pandemic this year. So the Informed Medical Opinions Party are an anti-vax. A medical choice party. I'm sure they would describe themselves as anti-vax. No, they just they would like parents to be able to make choices regarding whether or not their children are vaccinated. They're opposing vaccine mandates or employment mandates.
What about
they would like more parental leave, things like that.
Oh, okay. What about issues like euthanasia and abortion, which are also medical issues? That are
Don't hold me to this, but I imagine they would be
like pro-choice.
Yes, they'd be more pro-choice of the two. Like, it's not a given, and they are reasonably single-issue party, but broadly those ideologies go together. But of course, it's not guaranteed.
Awesome. Thanks for that summary. Very informative.
Yes, that's all the parties.
That's
at least on our ballot.
It's a little bit more knowledge than I had before this conversation. Very good.